Direct Misfire, talking many war games. Bensome and Spoon are taking aim. Comment, like, and subscribe today, keeping you notified and up to date.
When the mother world was young, there lived one called Chiron, who would be our father. He was tall and strong and brave, and had many friends amongst the beasts of the forest, mountains, and plains. They ran together, played together, and hunted together. They were content. They were free. One day, Chiron and his family were struck down by an unseen blow. Chiron fell to the ground in great pain, and when he arose, he became two people. One was brave and kind, and the other cunning and cruel. They argued and bickered about what path to take, each having different ideas on what should happen to their animal friends as the mother world cried in pain.
Hello champs, and welcome once again to another Direct Misfire Army Review. Joining me today are two very special guests. We have Hugh and Mr. Kris Kapsner as we tackle the herd. Good
Hello.
morning and good evening, I guess, depending on what part of the world.
Good evening.
And good morning from me.
How are you guys going?
Very well, thanks.
Doing well.
You ready to talk some beastie peoples?
Indeed.
Has anyone been to any events recently?
Just a weekend ago, I went to Dragonfall GT, took my herd there. Played a Friday night speed tournament, 4-game tournament, went 3-1 for that. And then the Saturday, Sunday GT, I went 3-1-1.
Ooh.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got the right
not too
person on
bad.
for this particular review.
Yeah, super experience. So what's a speed tournament?
So basically, it's with clocks are mandatory, and you have a small army. So 1,000 or 1,200 points. We went with 1,200 points for this one, and then game one, each person gets 25 minutes, and then it goes to 20 minutes for games 2 and 3, and then for the last game, you only have 15 minutes per side.
Wow.
So you're flying through your turns.
And does that affect your tactical decisions and stuff? Like, do you have to rush heaps? Just go like, I'm going to go over there, and just hope that you don't stuff it up?
Pretty much, yeah. You have to, you don't see a lot of spam lists and things like that. You're basically, most of the armies had 5 or 6 units, and you're just trying to pound each other's face in as fast as possible.
It sounds like my kind of Kings of War, because I mean, usually when I have time to make tactical decisions, it doesn't work out that well anyway. So it would probably give me an advantage just playing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so you might even do tactics like, I'm going to take my beast pack and turn it around in front of you. So your only choice is to charge in and do triple attacks against it. And you just have to roll all those dice. And yes, you have to roll all those dice.
Waste their time.
Right.
That is a weird tactic indeed. I like it.
All right, let's get into it. This could take a while, so we'll try and be as succinct as we can. So we'll start off with the army-wide special rule. So the herd are neutral, and most of the units in the herd have Pathfinder. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, basically you can at the double through most terrain apart from obstacles.
Pretty damn useful.
Mm.
Is it the best army-wide special rule?
I think it's pretty good.
It's got to be up there, I reckon.
I would say it's among the best, yeah.
I mean, when you compare it to rallying on hordes, which is what I've got, it's an awful lot better than that.
Yeah, I would agree. Elite with elves is certainly very handy, and there are a number of things that special rules are handy, but I would rate it above the median.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, elite, yeah, I can see that. That's pretty damn good too.
Seeing as most people want to put the Pathfinder item on a unit, having it on most of yours just for free.
Yeah.
It's very nice, yes.
Another thing that the herd get are hunting animals. These are much like the throwing mastiffs for the dwarfs and evil dwarfs. It's just a 12-inch ranged attack that you can use once per game. It can only be used against heroes or monsters, war engines, and troops, so no regiments or hordes.
Right.
And what's so special about these things compared to the other ones? I think the difference here is the piercing. So it's still 5 dice to hit, and they always hit on 4s. And when you cause a point of damage, you get to roll that again, so you can kind of get more dice if you're rolling well.
5 piercing attacks is pretty angry doggo.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Do you have any of those models by any chance, Kris? Do you like model like a little beastie to release on any of your guys?
I don't, and I tend not to play with these.
Okay.
Just because every time I play, I tend to try to go artifact light if I can and squeeze in another beast pack, and then if I can't do that, then the leftover points tend to go to some artifacts to kit out my units in a special way. So I tend not to have the extra points available to use these guys.
Fair enough.
But I do think they're good.
You can't use them on a whole lot of units. Most of
Right.
the army can't take them.
For sniping out little heroes and stuff, right? Like 12-inch range is decent, I guess, because you move forward and then their little wizard that's hanging out between units or something, you just
Stick some dogs onto them.
sick them, bite that bro on the ankles or whatever.
Yeah.
But they cost 10 points, and so it's just one of those things where
If you got points to
You
throw
just-
on.
yeah.
Throw away, yeah. Sounds good. And I imagine, Kris, you're a proponent of a lot of terrain on tables. Do you turn up to tournaments with a few spare forests just in case there's not enough? Or
If the field is looking a bit thin, just sneak in a couple
Just
of...
pass them down. Yeah, I try to get to my table before my opponents so I can do that, and they don't catch me.
Yep.
This
This is why he does it.
No, I do prefer a lot of terrain anyway, regardless of playing the herd. I think it helps to cut down on shooting spam lists and things like that in general. That can just kind of make it tough for newer players to play against and make them not want to come back. So,
Yeah.
Kings of War tables, beautiful. Makes sense.
right.
Okay, let's start off with the first entry in the herd, the Tribal Warriors. So I'll
Sure.
just run through this one to start off with. So the Tribal Warriors, they come in troop, regiment, and horde flavors. They're speed 6, melee 4, no ranged attack, defense 4, and they have attacks 10, 12, and 25, with nerves 9, 11, 13, 15, and 20, 22. And we're looking at costs of 85 points for the troop, 120 for the regiment, and 200 for the horde. And the only thing these guys get is Thunderous Charge and Pathfinder built in. What do we think of these guys?
Pretty cheap and cheerful.
Yeah, troops would be okay if you want it chuff, but there are better options for that later down in the list. They're cheap hordes, I guess.
I could see taking a Reggie or two or a horde. Just to movement 6 Pathfinder's pretty good for an infantry unit.
Most of the army has movement 6 or higher. So 6 is about as slow as we get.
Yes, it pretty much is. I do think it's a good unit. I tend not to use them because they're a good all-around unit, but they don't specialize in anything. And I tend to like my tools in my army to specialize in specific tasks. But they can form a nice backbone for an army too. Even the regiments at a nice 13, 15 nerve is really not bad. And with Pathfinder, if you can park them in the woods, they can hold up quite a bit with that nerve.
Good for your scoring.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Are we putting any items on these guys?
No.
I wouldn't think so.
Keep them cheap.
Yes.
Okay, Hugh, how about you run through the Spirit Walkers for us?
Spirit Walkers. Okay. So they can come in a troop regiment and a war horde. We've got speed 6, melee 4+, defense 3+, 15 attacks, and they are fearless. So they have nerve 12, 16, and 23. I should probably say that their attacks is 15, 20, and 35. And points 100, 140, or 230. So a little bit pricier than your Tribal Warriors. And they, of course, have Thunderous Charge as well.
So
which
these
is
are the
interesting.
berserk type units, lower defense, higher attacks, and fear.
Yeah. So these are the psycho units that a lot of factions have, don't they? They're the kind of berserker kind of friends.
These are the guys that I kind of like to fall back on. I like the berserker units just because of that fearless, and even at a troop level, they're still quite threatening because you don't want these guys getting into your flank.
Yeah, and well, lots of things with crushing 1 or 2, like or crushing 2+, I guess, is no different between the defense of these guys or the Tribal Warriors. So you don't always lose out too much on that defense 3+.
If you're getting hit by monsters or large cav, better these guys than someone else.
These, as far as infantry goes, these tend to be the infantry of choice that I've seen most herd players take. It is that fearless nerve and the high number of attacks. So you're just kicking out ton of attacks, especially at the horde level, which was updated to be 40 at the horde level.
Oh, okay.
So you're looking at 20 hits, and it's not uncommon to see like the +1 to hit item here and brew of sharpness. So you're looking at hitting on 3s. You'll see that on a horde. Now you're looking at 30 hits on the horde. With Pathfinder, that's pretty pretty deadly in Thunder's Charge. Oftentimes backed up with a hero that's throwing Bane Chant on them. They're pretty scary. Also, I see +1 speed on the horde a bit. So you're looking at a speed 7 horde dishing out 40 attacks with Pathfinder is pretty dangerous.
Wow, that's terrifying. And the usual disadvantage of having this really wide-ass horde unit is somewhat mitigated by the fact that they come with that Pathfinder, so you don't have to worry as much as a lot of hordes do about getting disrupted all the time.
Right. And I've taken these guys in regiments at just 140 points, and I don't put anything on them. They're very good at, I think, making people fear them more than their 140 usually threatens. Just because 20 attacks, like you were mentioning, if you get that into a flank, that really hurts. And they're not easy to take off being a -16. They're doing what they want to do unless you kill them. So
yeah, I could see them being a real threat.
When did the attack increase come in for the horde?
I believe that was an errata update, and it's updated in Easy Army.
Right.
Yep, I can see it there in Easy Army, 40 attacks. Still 15 for the troop and 20 for the regiment.
Correct.
Even a troop could be a bit cheeky of these bad boys.
That's what I like.
Yes.
Regiments. I mean, if I'm going horde, then I'm really committing with the 230 points in it, and that's when I would start putting items on them in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah, might as well. What about that one that gives you elite and vicious for the turn? I forget what it's called.
That one is no longer there.
Oh,
That
of
one's
course.
been removed.
Okay, cut that out. Make me look smart.
Because it was a really good item.
We're constantly shaking things up on you.
Elite or vicious would be good.
Yeah, just standard elite and vicious is still there, isn't it? And either of those would be pretty delectable when you've got 40 attacks coming out.
Yep.
Right. For 45 points, though, to put a brew of sharpness on them, and if you don't have that on Stampede or something else, I mean, you're talking about a very expensive unit, at 275, but 30 hits. I mean, that is really good as far as what you would be averaging, that ballpark anyway.
Yeah, you might even chew through another horde in a single round of combat with that kind of power dishing out.
Right.
Why don't you tell us about the tribal longhorns?
Sure. So, tribal longhorns, this is kind of your infantry. They come in troops and regiment, not hordes, at 100 points and 145. You're looking at same speed 6 like the rest of the infantry. These guys hit on 3 pluses with their 10 attacks and 12 attacks. Their defense 4, unlike the Spirit Walkers at defense 3. But they have that slightly higher nerve at 10-12 for the troop, 14-16 for the regiment. They have Crushing Strength 1 and Thunderous Charge 1 with the Pathfinder. So they can really dish out some damage just as troops at 100 points, 10-12 nerve at a 4+ defense, and you park those guys in a wood with Pathfinder, they're probably weathering the storm unless something very large is hitting them. And then they're hitting back still with that Crushing 1. When they're hitting back, they're not losing that if they get into an ongoing combat. So pretty nice unit. I tend not to play with them myself, though. But I would like to build a couple of units of these. Same
reason you don't play much Tribal Warriors, because they're kind of not that focused. Is that your reasoning there?
Yeah, I could see. My reasoning is it tends to be I like the Guardian Brutes, and they're very similar with the Crushing Strength 1. The Guardian Brutes have Thunderous Charge 2 versus Thunderous 1 with these guys. Though it's I could see an argument to put a unit or two of these guys, particularly if you're wanting to stick with a theme of infantry and not go with the large infantry.
Yeah, fair enough.
And these guys have a slightly larger footprint because they're on 25mm bases instead of the standard 20.
True.
Yeah. Larger. So for your 15 or 25 points respectively, you basically, over the Tribal Warriors, you pick up an extra melee to hit and a Crushing Strength and an extra nerve. So that seems like a pretty good rate. And you're in a slightly larger base, but There's some pretty sweet models. Like there's a lot of things you can use for longhorns, of course, but the various forms of bestigors and stuff over the years, I gather that's what you're using for this one.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of them. I just don't have them painted. So they tend not to make their way under the table.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Yeah. Oh, they are a handsome unit though. Okay.
They are. Yeah, they're good looking models.
Next up, we've got the tribal spears, troop, regiment, and horde on these ones, like the warriors and walkers. And very similar stat lines. We have speed 6, melee 4, defense 4, attacks of 10, 15, and 30. And we have nerve of 8, 10 for the troop, 12, 14 for the regiment, and 19, 21 for the horde. They cost 90, 125, and 205 respectively. And these guys just have phalanx. That's it. No thunderous, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, and the inbuilt Pathfinder. So you pick up 3 attacks in a regiment and 5 in a horde, plus the phalanx, pardon me. It's only 5 points, but what I notice is that they lose a nerve.
And your thunderous, you lose your thunderous as well. So it kind of puts you back into that defensive position.
But then they're not as strong defensively at the same time because they have that one less nerve.
Yeah.
They get a bit scaredy cat when you give them a spear, I guess.
They know they're going to die, so here, have a sphere, just sit in a corner somewhere. Yeah, no, these guys, I'm not taking them ever.
Well, I would say with the change to hindering, with the Clash of Kings change to hindering, I can see them serving a purpose in specific instances, particularly if you know the type of army you're going to be facing, or if you want to put in that, if you know the meta is Thunderous Charge heavy, putting these guys in to knock Thunderous Charge completely off can be helpful. With the new, hindering rules, you basically only lose 1 Thunderous, so your knights are still Thunderous 1. Various other things, your chariots, which are making a comeback now, are still Thunderous 1 against these. They would lose all their Thunderous. So they could still serve that niche, and that was the goal of the rules committee to making that change, was to make spear troops or spear infantry in general in all sizes more useful.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. Actually, I disagree with you, Bensome. I wouldn't. If I was taking an army which had quite a few sort of low to the ground infantry, like it was quite a wide kind of force, I could see if I'm taking a bunch of tribal warriors, I would definitely swap out a unit, for tribal spears. Have one of each or something like that, because it's just nice to have that possibility, the defensive role. Because like a lot of very fast, sort of hard hitting armies, when you hit them with something faster and even harder hitting, it can be a bit of a weakness. Do you know what I mean? Like a big, nasty cavalry unit or something. So I suppose it's a running theme, but stick them in a wood and
stick everything in a wood.
Like lots of woods for all these infantry.
That's why you swap a few of those cheeky woods onto the board before the game starts, if you can.
Right.
Yeah, I just feel like it's really hard to try and line up spear infantry to take a charge from fast-moving units when you have other units that are juicier targets.
Fair enough.
Yep, yeah. It can be. It can be.
What's up next?
Okay, so hunters, I guess it's my turn. We got a troop or a regiment form. They have speed 6, melee 5+, range 5+, defense 3+, 8 and 10 attacks respectively. Nerve, we've got 8, 10 on the troop, or 12, 14 on the regiment, and 75 points and 105 respectively. So throwing weapons and vanguard on these guys, so you can move them up a little bit before the game starts and chuck sharp stuff at people.
You can give them both,
either 8 or 10 attacks, but only a 5+ range, so you're only getting 2 or 3 hits from these bros on average.
Yeah, but you just want to cause that nerve check.
Yeah, it's all about just that one wound in there, and you can exchange their throwing weapons for bows for free, which is interesting. So because they can get up the board quite quickly, I could see how both throwing weapons and bows, it is like something of a trade-off. Like either is effective. I'd be tempted to go with the bows though. I don't know about you, Bensome and Kris. What would you do?
Yeah, I prefer throwing weapons on things that can move a bit faster than speed 6 because you don't have the -1 to hit when you move with throwing weapons.
Yep.
So moving and throwing seems like the thing that you want to do all the time, whereas bows, you can kind of sit back a bit and shoot. And if you take bows, then as soon as you move, then you're hitting on 6s.
Yeah, but you're discarding that vanguard ability to some extent when you've got the bows as well, don't you?
There's not a lot of ranged in the herd, so we don't have a lot of choice. It's these or the centaurs, really.
Or chariots.
Or chariots.
Yeah, I could see. How often do you see a hill just outside of a deployment zone? especially in a tournament kind of scenario where they don't want to put too many hills in the deployment zones, like the old cliche. Just having these bros up against that hill, vanguard onto it, and then just chill there for the game, so that whenever your opponent is a bit cheeky and passes a nerve check that they probably shouldn't, just pop a wound on them with your bows and make them chuck dice at it again.
So you're hoping to get onto the hill and just sit there for all the entire game and shooting from turn one.
Yep, that's the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that does. I mean, that is a very common, I guess, layout for terrain, is to keep those hills just out of the deployment zones, and being able to vanguard up and then just sit there and be able to shoot without penalty first round. I could see a use for that. I tend to keep the throwing weapons on mine when I run them, just because it allows that flexibility of no penalty, hitting on fives and just kind of running around and causing that little bit of havoc, a wound or two here on cheap units, and being enough to slow down a line or take something off entirely. I do like a little trick with these guys though. I like they are the cheapest unlock in the army, with that regiment at 105 points.
Mm-hmm.
And being a 12-14 nerve, they're not easy to take off. You have to throw a little bit at them to make them go away. And they are one of those few units in the game, where you can throw that +1 movement item on them and get top of turn 1 charges on things.
Oh yeah.
So
it's actually charging in.
For only 120 points, you've got a nice little unit there that can vanguard up, and then if you win that roll off to go first, you can charge into that horde of elven archers or something like that you really don't want to get shot with. So it's a nice little trick to use anyway.
That sounds super annoying. I would not have thought of using that. That's smart actually. Yeah. And as you say, a cheap unlock. So even at 105, I mean, it looks on paper like you're not getting a huge amount for those 30 points with 2 attacks and a bunch of nerve, but getting the unlock in there at that low rate is pretty legit.
That's an increase of 4 for the nerve, so that's not insignificant.
Yeah, that's actually a big increase.
Yeah, it's a big enough increase where people have to commit something significant to it to take it off.
Yeah,
not just another shaft unit.
When you're at 8-10, defense 3, you sort of just cop.
You sneeze and
anything, and you just volley in their general direction. Off they go.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cool unit.
So what else have we got in terms of infantry?
Harpies. This is only in a troop form. Speed 10. It's the flying gargoyle unit that doesn't regen, but it does have Pathfinder and Vicious. 8 attacks, defense 3 at melee 4, 9-11 nerve, so slightly better nerve than gargoyles. Slightly more expensive though at 90 points. I do like these guys, though. I tend to run only 1 unit if I run a unit of these. But I do favor the beast pack in lieu of these guys, just to save the 20 points. But I will say, having a flying unit with 8 attacks is very handy with Vicious, and getting them around in the flanks. They certainly cause more damage than the beast packs do for 20 more points.
And just flying chaff, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm jealous of flying chaff. I don't have it in either of the armies that I play regularly. And would love a bit of Flappy Birds on the table. Bensome has annoyed me with his gargoyles on many occasions.
Just because you can sit them behind a unit, so you can't shoot them and then zip them out 20 in front of something that you want to charge.
Right. I use my beast packs the same way. The only downside is if somebody else does that trick where they're flying something in front of my units, the beast packs can't go through their units, but the harpies could go over. So that's the significant advantage of having that fly.
So they have their place still, which is good.
Yep.
We'll just cap off the last of this before we go to a break for large infantry. So the first of these bigger fellas, we have the Guardian Brutes. So these large infantry comes in regiment and hordes, as you'd expect. Speed 6, melee 4.
My favorite unit.
Your favorite unit?
Yes. I'm a Minotaur guy.
Defense 5.
That's why.
They have the highest defense so far. Maybe the highest defense in the army.
Pretty much, yes.
Defense 5, 12 attacks on the regiment, 24, which is pretty good for large infantry on the horde, with nerves of 12, 15, and 15, 18. These guys cost 150 for the regiment and 230 for the horde. And what we're getting in addition to all those stats, is crushing strength 1, thunderous charge 2. And these guys don't have Pathfinder, so it's very specific.
No, but they have fury, which is amazing.
Kind of with the nerve differentiation there, the 15, 18, the 3 between the waver and the rout.
So they're more likely to waver, but if you waver them in combat,
Then they
then
just punch
they're
it back
still
anyway.
going to get real angry.
Right. And a lot of large infantry like that are actually 12 14s and 15 17s. So these are, they have that same waiver value, but that's just that one more for the route value.
That can make all the difference. I mean, I find that my hordes of brutes, which are a little lower on the nerve, can often just barely run off by like that 1 or 2 points from a few volleys of ranged fire or what have you. And yeah, just that couple of extra points on the big infantry, or 1 point as the case may be. Yeah, it's no joke.
And how are you running these guys, Kris? Are you always taking hordes?
I always take hordes unless I'm looking at smaller point games. So at 1,000 points or 1,200 points, I may run a regiment or two.
Mm-hmm.
I think they still have a nice purpose there with that defense 5 and a 12 15 nerve is still pretty solid for 150 points. But in general, I run 2 hordes in my list.
And are you putting any items on them?
A lot of times I'll go naked, and when I have an extra 5 or 10 points, I'll put like the healing brew on one or something like that. But a lot of times I run them just as they are, backed up by Shaman.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, what models are you using to represent these guys?
Minotaurs all the way.
Yeah. Default.
I own over 80 Minotaur models. I have to use them for something.
Okay.
Holy shit.
Yep, good excuse.
Exactly.
I'm kind of jealous with the 24 attacks, because all the big guys that I normally play with are only 18 and they're still melee 4, and I just find they just do 3 damage.
Quite often whiff those attacks. Yeah, there's 4 pluses to hit. I mean, sure, you can go on average, I'm going to hit 12 times out of that 24, but an awful lot you find that you fluff it, I find.
Yeah, I've done 20 damage with these guys, and I've done 3 damage. It does swing a lot with that 4+. I mean,
Thunderous 2, crushing 1. Wow. I mean, 24 attacks, that is terrifying on the charge.
It is. The key is to get them, get the charge with them. They can win that grind, though, because of that fury. I've won the grind a lot of times with just having crushing 1 backed up with the shaman who's bane chanting and healing and things like that. With that defense 5 and fury, they can win against a lot of things.
Yeah, I would not be wanting to go into these guys unless I'm sure I'm going to take them off. Yeah.
Okay, Hugh, how about you round us off before the break?
Talk about the lichens then, the other large infantry, which of course is big, scary, juiced up, steroid-driven wolfies, as we can see in a picture below.
All of them are juiced up and steroid-driven?
Mate, do you even luft? I mean, look, they've had so many steroids that their groins have turned into just little tiny puffs of muff.
Can't say that I'm a fan of the Mantic models.
I kind of like them in a like silly kind of way. Like they're a bit over the top, but I think that's kind of their jam.
Why did they not have hair apart from the head?
I don't know. The hair's a bit weird. I'll give you that. All right. Anyway, they are a regiment or a horde, and they have speed 9.
It's like a bodybuilder at Halloween. Just put on a mask, that'll do.
Halloween bodybuilders with melee 3+, very reliable. Defense 4+, no ranged attack, 9 attacks on the regiment and 18 on the horde, 12-14 nerve and 15-17 nerve respectively. So you can see that that's 1 point lower than the brutes, to break, that is, not to waver. And the points are 160 and 245. So you pay just a little bit more than your Guardian brutes. You get crushing strength 1, nimble, and regenerate 5+.
I really like these guys.
Oh, they're so powerful.
Speed 9 and nimble.
And they have the Pathfinder, don't they?
Yep.
Because so in most these Lycan friends are in a few different army lists. Am I correct?
They tend to be popular. Yeah.
So you see these guys, but with nimble 9 and movement 9 and Pathfinder. Holy crap, that is so swift.
The regen's just like an added bonus. I don't find it does a whole lot. I mean, sometimes it'll just get back a couple of points of damage, but yeah, it's mainly that speed and threat into the flanks.
Yeah, certainly don't hit nearly as hard as the brutes with 2 less thunderous charge and a lot less attacks, but yeah, it's about just shock infantry, right? Shock large
Well,
infantry. They work like super fast shock cavalry, really.
yeah. I mean, they're thrown right in with werewolves and fallen and that type of unit. With that corkscrew charges that you can pull off with the nimble.
That we'd never do because they're just not good. It never feels good.
So mathematically speaking, these guys hit just as well as the brutes do, because though they have 3 less and 6 less attacks respectively, they're hitting on 3s versus 4s. So mathematically speaking, they're equal. But they, because of that, you can't roll extra good and do the extra damage that you can get away with on the brutes, and you don't have that thunderous, like you were mentioning, to really scare some high defense units.
Yes, the average number of hits is the same, but their ceiling is a little lower. So
right.
Slightly worse, I guess.
And the defense 4 is what gets these guys. So I find shooting tends to, just with where their nerve is, I tend to get wavered quite a bit with these guys. Regen a bit back and then get shot off. That happens a lot. So you have to be kind of careful with these, but they do threaten very well.
Yeah.
You throw a couple of units or even a single unit out on a flank, and your opponent's really having to counter them with something.
I'm not surprised your opponent shoots them a lot, because it's freaking scary. Especially if you go first. You've basically only got one turn to shoot them, and then they're right in your grill.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's when you've got your tribal hunters doing their first turn charge.
Yes, indeed.
It's all for the light.
The tribal hunters are blazing the trail in front of the Lycans.
That is a scary prospect.
So are we putting the crystal pendant on the horde, or what are we doing?
Crystal pendant all the way.
I tend to like to throw another crushing one on these guys to get them up to crushing 2 on that horde. They are expensive, but you're going from 245 to 275. But that is really then a very scary unit with 18 attacks hitting on 3s with crushing 2. So with Pathfinder,
The price makes me think I wouldn't ever want to take more than 2 units, because then that's just too much into
I would agree.
a soft front line.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And I could even see you putting a bit of extra courage on these bros, just because they cost so many points for a relatively low nerve. Most units around that 245 mark are going to have a couple of extra points in that nerve category, if they're infantry in any case. So I could see, if you have a few points left over, chuck in Brew of Courage or something.
And that also helps the regen as well if you increase their nerve.
True.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave that there for now. We'll just take a quick break, and then we'll come back and tackle the monsters in large cav.
All right.
Dark Chiron lurked in the shadows and helped Garkin the Black forge the beasts we call orcs. He reached out and tore many of our ancestors apart, offering their lives to the smith for his forges and anvils. Garkin and Chiron also pulled apart the wild men, the elves, the dwarves, and he put both animal and man thing together, imprisoning them in strange minds and bodies. After 900 days, the darkness was born and unleashed upon the world.
All right, we're back and we're talking centaurs. We've got centaur longmanes first off the ranks, and there's a picture of what I presume is a centaur longmane on this page, and he is ripped. Check out his awesome big head as well. Like, I would not want to muck around with that guy. Just luscious locks. He's really like quite a man.
It's like a 60-year-old bodybuilder, this one.
Yeah, he does. He has got that kind of vibe about him, doesn't he? He looks really old, but still just like pumping iron at the gym every day, and hands as large as his head.
That model is from the Loka game that they did.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a Mantic model. It's different from the Centaur kit that you'll buy. But if you pick up Loka, you can grab that model.
Mantic love their muscles.
That other, in that picture, that other female kind of tree thing, that's also from that, I believe.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Okay, well, the Centaur longmanes come in a trooper regiment. They have speed 8, melee 3+, nice and reliable, defense 4+, 8 attacks and 16 attacks between troop and regiment, nerve 11-13, 14-16, and points 130 or 200. Crushing strength 1, thunderous charge 1, and of course Pathfinder
So this is like medium cav.
Man, Pathfinder is incredibly good on these. Like in every other army, you look at these kinds of units with thunderous, crushing, really high speed, and you're like, man, this unit would be rad if it had Pathfinder. You just don't have that trouble. Yeah, love it. Powerful unit.
I think they're a bit soft.
It's the defense 4 that makes it
Yeah.
difficult with these guys. Yeah.
And I don't want to be shielding these guys as well as my brutes and my lichens. I'm shielding too much.
Well, they've got similar amount of impact to a lichen, 2 attacks less on that regiment compared with a lichen horde, but you do have an extra thunderous built in.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the impact is pretty comparable, but they're a fair bit cheaper.
But don't have nimble.
No, that's true. They don't have nimble and they do have 1 less speed,
Yeah.
but they're still booting it through the forest like at a rate of knots and hitting like a Mack truck. So for 200 points, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. No, they're good. They kind of form that that middle ground where I think, like the tribal hunters of the infantry, there's like things that do their job just a little bit better in general, like the lichens and things that are just a little faster and have that nimble, so you can march up their 18 inches and still have a pivot to get around on somebody's flank if that's what you're looking to do, where these guys can't do that. And I know they're cheaper, but they kind of fall on that middle ground where I think a lot of people struggle to get them in their lists because of that.
I can understand that. That's often the way of things.
Yeah, they wouldn't go into my list.
Yeah, when you've got enough variety of units where you've got your really specialized unit on this side of the curve and your really specialized unit on the other side, and then you've got one in the middle, often it's hard to justify that one in the middle.
Right.
So what's the other Centaur unit that we've got, Chris?
The Centaur Bray Hunters. So these are your shooting version. They don't hit quite as hard in melee, obviously. They still have Thunder's Charge, but same speed 8. They're melee 4 instead of 3, but they do have a ranged 5+ attack. Their defense 3+ instead of 4+. Their attacks drop down to 6 and 12 for the troop and regiment. Nerve is the same, 11, 13, and 14, 16. They're a bit cheaper, though, at 105 points for the troop and 165 for the regiment. These do have nimble. They lose that crushing strength, but retain the thunderous charge and Pathfinder. They have bows with 24 inches. So these guys can move and shoot without penalty. Pretty nice.
I think I prefer these guys over the long mains because even still thunderous charge means they can still do something in combat, but you have the versatility of being able to run and shoot for most of the game and get stuck in right at the end if you need it.
Right.
Would you prefer troop or regiment for these guys?
Regiment, I would think, for the nerve buff and the unit strength.
And the fact
I
that
would
you
think so
have
too.
And it unlocks.
4
as well.
hits instead of 2 on your bows makes it much more likely that you actually get that wound on. Get that damage. You're still not going to get a lot of damage, but you're
It's something.
very reliably going to get 1 or 2 on pretty much anything, which is...
You're getting 4 hits instead of 2, which is, I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, with 2 hits a lot of the time, you'll still just fluff your defense roll.
Right.
You've done nothing, yeah. Well, 4, you're very reliably going to get that nerve check happening.
And 165 is cheap enough for a regiment for what it does as well.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
If it was any more, I probably wouldn't take them.
It's on the high side, I can't help but think, for a harassment kind of unit, for, a fairly indirect threat.
It is, but because of the nimble and long range and their speed that they have, the 24-inch range bows, they can really kind of get around on a flank and be shooting every single turn and be doing a little damage here and there, and then at that, those turn 5, turn 6 charges to get into flanks or blow up something that even to the front that's already been wounded by something else. With 12 attacks and thunderous, that's not bad. It really 6 attacks typically doesn't scare anybody, but 12 attacks into the flank with thunderous charge 1, now that's going to scare them, and it's going to take some stuff off.
Right, you've talked me into it. I want 2 regiments now. They that sounds good.
Did they agree along? Okay, so we'll move into the Beast Pack, which seems to be the chaff unit of choice here. What they are, troop and regiment unit. Speed 10 on these fellas. They have melee of 4, defense 3, 6 and 12 attacks, much like exactly like the Bray Hunters, with nerve of 9, 11 and 12, 14 for 70 and 110 points each. These guys have nimble, they're height 1 cavalry, and they have the vicious as well as built-in pathfinder. It's the 70-point troop that's the go here, I think.
I tend to run a lot of these.
A lot of the 70-point variety, I imagine.
I do, yeah. Although I will say the regiment, for only 40 points more, does serve a purpose. So the difference with that is that footprint then turns into something that you can corkscrew charge with.
There's that word again.
Now, they're only height 1, so you never know what you're going to be able to actually see and get around. But with having nimble, that does not get knocked off when you're disordered because it's not flying. And 12 attacks, that's not bad for 110 points, 12-14 nerve. A lot of chaff units that run out and tap this won't actually even waver it, and then you're nimble charging around into a flank or something like that. So there is a use for that regiment, but I tend to run 3 or 4 troops in every list I write.
The flavor text is interesting for these ones. I might just read that out. Lions, wolves, brocks, and other beasts of the wilds. They are of the mother, and they all share kinship with the herd. They will often aid them in hunting as well as in battle, and occasionally will even allow themselves to be ridden by those they feel are worthy. So I've got a few questions here. Why is there no one riding a lion?
I think there's one living legend riding a lion in the Basilean list.
I take that back. And what is a brock?
Badgers, the dwarves. That's what they ride.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Of course, brock riders. Yeah. So this beast pack is supposed to be height 1, lions, wolves, and brocks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Stuff like that.
So what figures do you use for these, Kris?
I tend to use the old Chaos Warhounds because I was running a lot of Warhounds back in the day.
Because everyone has those.
I could imagine a lot of people do. You get direwolves in there, things like that. Maybe I reckon it could be a cool little modeling project to have like a bunch of horses with no riders on them, just kicking away. But lions, wolves, yeah. Lions and wolves. That's a pretty vicious, angry chaff unit.
They don't do a lot of damage typically with their 6 attacks, but every now and again you'll have a beast pack just go crazy on somebody, like this last tournament.
The hero moment.
It's the hero moment. Back-to-back turns, I had a beast pack go on Magnilde and do 4 wounds and take her off, and then they followed into the front of a mounted Suns unit that had been tangling with a Chimera, beat the Chimera, but they had some wounds hanging on it. And then this beast pack did 4 more wounds to the mounted Suns and took them off. So every now and again, they'll just do something crazy like that. You're like, it's the best unit.
Yeah, they did.
I think it's because you don't expect them to do anything. So if they do anything, you're very excited about it.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So cheap chaff, with a vicious underbelly, definitely tick of approval.
This army, you'll notice, has a lot of different chaff options.
Yeah.
Really like 5 different, you have the Centaur Bray Hunter troop that we just talked about, but you have the Harpies, and then you're looking at those tribal hunters that can vanguard up and get in the way and things. So you have a lot of different units, but these tend to be, because they're so cheap, tend to be the unit of choice. With speed 10 and being only 70 points, it really doesn't matter if they can't do any damage. They're going to serve their purpose.
Just get in the way. Yeah. And the herd kind of need the variety in chaff offerings just because they're across the board defensive 4.
Correct. Yeah. So you're using these guys to give cover to your units. You're also using them to prevent flank charges as you're rushing towards your enemy as fast as you can. A common tactic I use with these beast packs is to start them behind my units, and then if I'm outflanked and I know I'm needing to protect a flank of like my Guardian Brute hordes as they're rushing up, what I'll do is I'll measure to exactly where my Guardian Brutes are going to get up to. I move the beast pack up first through my units, pivot 90 degrees and go straight to the side because they're nimble. They can pull off a long turn like that. And then I run my Guardian Brutes right up behind them straight forward. So it's going to take the enemy a turn to get through the beast pack. And by that point, my Guardian Brutes are slamming into what they want to slam into. So I also use them to just shoot them right through my units and just get in the way of my opposing units before I'm setting up my charges so I can maintain the thunderous.
Makes sense. And with 20 inches on the march and then a rotate afterwards, that's some nimble beasties.
Yes.
I like it. All right, so giant eagles. We've got a large cavalry unit, regiment or a horde, and they have 9 attacks and 18 attacks respectively. Speed 10 flyers, melee 4+, defense 4+. So interesting little middle of the range flying unit. Nerves 10 and 12 on the regiment, or 13 and 15 on the horde.
And that's actually higher now due to Clash of Kings.
Oh, is that right?
It's 12-14 now and 15-17 now if you're running Clash of Kings 2018.
15-17, that's a big upgrade. And there's still 200
Yes.
points?
Gone up by 2.
Yes, so they each it got a bump of 2 to both the regiment and the
Wow.
horde.
Okay, now we're talking. Because I was about to say, like, for those kind of points, you can get rid of them relatively easily. But
Yeah.
Fly, Fury, and Thunderous Charge 2, some angry birdos.
And Pathfinder, so they can fly into forests.
Yes.
Indeed.
And that fury actually comes in handy with that nerve bump more than it used to, right?
Yeah.
You were losing them at what they were getting routed at what they're now getting wavered. So that nerve bump did help them out a lot. I still don't see them a lot, though. I think they do have a use in the list. I think you could build around a unit or two of these,
Especially because of that nerve bump.
Yes.
If they were still 13-15 for a horde, no thanks.
Well, they're very comparable in terms of role to the Lycan, I would have said, because they're that really fast but still hard-hitting, monstrous kind of unit.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Fly instead of Movement 9 Nimble, which is, I suppose, slightly better than Movement 9 Nimble. And then you've got Thunderous Charge 2 rather than your Crushing Strength 1. So they're actually very comparable when they have the same nerve with that upgrade, same number of attacks. They're not hitting on 3+, they're hitting on 4+. They are slightly worse in that department, but for a lot less points,
And they don't regen.
This is a good unit.
So, it's a good unit.
You don't even have to be too smart with how you position your other units because you can just flap right on over them.
And if you want, use a regiment and just screen your Lycans and Brutes because they're height 3.
Yes.
Good point.
And even more importantly, screen your Stampedes
Yes.
because they're height 3.
Yeah. There's not much more to say about the Giant Eagles, I don't think, that we haven't said before. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Straight into the opponent's ranged unit, turn 2, and try to run straight through them and then turn around and face the rear of the opponent's army. That is a real worry.
Okay, Kris, how about you tell us about the chariots?
Sure. The tribal chariots come in regiments and hordes. Speed 9. They're melee 3, range 5+, defense 4, 8 attacks and 16 attacks, and the nerve is 12, 14, 15, 17 for 140 points and 215 points. For that, you get bows, range 24 inches on them, and Thunderous Charge 2. This unit does not have Pathfinder.
Speed 9's more speed than most chariots.
As soon as I read that it doesn't have Pathfinder, it turns me off quite. Chariots shouldn't have Pathfinder, though, for God's sake. I mean, you can't just...
No, they shouldn't.
Yeah, chariots don't find paths. Yeah.
No, they need to have the paths, otherwise you just throw a track or whatever. Yeah, they should take damage.
So I have run Wine of Elvenkind on a horde of these guys, and it is a very nice unit. It's expensive, at 255, but you can move and shoot without penalty. You have a rather large, unwieldy base that with Nimble you can do some things with that you just can't without Nimble. And it's as reliable of a shooting platform as you can get in the herd list with 16 attacks hitting on 5, so you're hitting 5 or 6 times. You can Bane Chant them with the Shaman, which we're going to talk about later, but it's Bane Chant 3, so you have a reasonable chance of getting piercing off. So it's one of those things where you can do a little bit of damage with that unit, and it can serve a purpose. I would say not great, but it's okay.
Yeah, you convinced me with the Centaur Bray Hunters, but I'm not quite buying it on these friends because they are a lot of points. Yes, they're going to reliably get they're going to cause those nerve checks from range, and yes, they can follow up a few bow shots with a pretty nasty charge if they can get away with it. I'd be tempted by the caterpillar potion as much as I think it's kind of mean to take the Pathfinder on your only unit that doesn't bloody have Pathfinder to begin with. But
Sure.
you're just going to be disrupted a lot, right? A horde of chariots is so big.
20 centimeter flank.
You pay so many points. I don't know. I'm not sold.
And any sort of movement, you're probably going to clip some sort of terrain with that footprint.
Well, see, that's another use for beast packs. So what I'll do with my beast packs, if I'm running a unit like this and that doesn't have Pathfinder, and my Guardian Brutes for that matter, when they don't have Pathfinder, I will run a unit of like a beast pack unit over to the edge of that forest and stay on that outer edge to make my chariot go around it, or to make my Guardian Brutes go around it, so it does not have to take that shortest path through the woods, and therefore I can maintain my Thunderous completely.
When you're charging.
Yeah.
That's clever.
Sneaky. But still, you're using another unit just so this thing can do something. It
Yeah,
seems
It's a
a bit
cheap unit.
counterintuitive.
It's a 70-point upgrade.
I might be skipping these.
I like that tactic though. I could use that, man. Yeah,
You gotta remember.
You were right to get an expert on this cast. That's good. That's good. I'll use that. Whose turn is it for Brutox? Is that you, Benson?
Yeah, I'll take the Brutox. I love me monsters. Brutox is a monster, like I just said.
Are we skipping over the other large cav?
Does it matter?
Oh, the stampede. Yeah.
We can skip over talking about them. Nobody takes those anyway.
Yes, so the one that you never see on the table, the Stampede. I think it's because it's regular. So this large cav only comes in hordes, so that's already a downside. You can't take regiments of these things. And they're only speed 7 compared to your speed 9s and 10s of the other things. Melee 4, defense 4, attacks paltry 30 with a nerve of only 1822, but that has changed. It's 1820 now.
1820.
Yeah, for 260 points, so you're not getting a whole lot. And it gives you Crushing Strength 1, Strider, and Thunderous Charge 3. So you'll only do a couple of points of damage if they get into combat.
So droves of wild horses, cattle, and steppe rhino, or even larger beasts. Okay, so we're getting into the larger beasts after that. But I noticed that a beast pack consists of lions, wolves, and brocks, while as this is horses and cows. Yet something's not quite adding up for me there.
So they don't scratch you; they just stomp on you.
Okay.
So for mine, I took those ogre Mornfang cav from Warhammer, and I created Minotaur Centaur with those the bodies of the Mornfang with a Minotaur upper torso for my Stampede.
Whew, that's pretty legit. That sounds cool.
So what do we think of these guys?
They're rubbish.
They don't seem all that good. I would expect most herd armies to have 2 of these units at least.
They're just, there's so many in an army that's spoilt for choice when it comes to hordes of large, nasty, stumpy things.
Which is the largest and
just the best of
stompiest.
those horde of large, nasty, stumpy things, isn't it? So, yeah, for a few extra points, you get so many attacks and you get so much nerve that it almost doesn't matter what else is on it with the Crushing Strength and Thunderous Charge and all that.
It's certainly something that you need to screen or have a second unit for the redundancy, because one of them will get focused off.
I usually lose one of these units as my first, other than my chaff if I'm throwing it in front of people and things. This is a unit that people target and they take it off.
Because you don't want it in combat.
Correct. So a lot of times you have to run 2 like you're, otherwise they're just taking off your 1, and then you don't have one to run around and play with and have fun with taking other units off.
Have you had any issues with phalanx units opposing these guys? Because if you have the Thunderous...
Yeah, I face a lot of phalanx. I tend to not care.
I mean, it's still 30 attacks.
And the reason it's still 30 attacks. And they're crushing 1, and I tend to... If I'm running into a phalanx unit, I probably have a shaman backing close enough to cast
enchant.
Yeah, basically putting him up to crushing strength.
Yeah.
2.
And against most phalanx units, you're back at wounding on a 2+ at that point, and you just
exactly
mow straight through them anyway. I can't help but feel like they don't need Crushing Strength 1. You could take that off and just make them Thunderous, and then they've got more of a counter. But with crushing strength 1 anyway and 30 attacks. I can see why you don't care.
Back when Uncharted Empires publicly play tested and I was first coming to this game, the Stampede was just Thunder's Charge on it. I think it was just Thunder's Charge 4. And I did try them out a little bit, and I didn't really like them because it is actually not that hard to throw something into this unit to knock the Thunderous Charge off.
Mm.
All you have to do is cause that 1 point of damage in close combat with a chaff unit, and it's down to that crushing strength 1. So I felt like it was really hard. I mean, not like it was a worthless unit, but it wasn't nearly like that unit you want to get in your list. I will say I find I don't want to take more than 2. I want to have some higher defense in my army as well, or just flat out some higher nerve if you're going to go with like Spirit Walker hordes or something like that can handle the grind. But these guys can do both the grind and, punch you in the face. So
I was just thinking thematically, having no crushing strength and just the Thunderous Charge makes the Stampede sound like a Stampede.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they've got that feeling of being like this unstoppable just horde of little beasties.
And if they don't get momentum or a run up, then yeah, they're tough to run, but they need that run up.
Yeah, because I mean, if you see like a oxen or something, I feel like that's the kind of thing. This might be Lion King style, right? If they're just chilling in a grove or whatever, munching grass, you're like, I'm not too worried. But when they all get moving as a group, all of a sudden Simba's crying and it's all very dramatic.
Well, I would argue that what they're describing, rhinos and things like that, would naturally have a crushing 1, but if it's just standing there and then hitting you. But I understand.
This is true.
Yeah,
fair enough. But I mean, it depends. Yeah, it depends what you think of the beastie as, right? So yeah.
Right.
And they've just gotten better with the change to Thunderous Charge. How it doesn't just get and take it off if you're hindered.
Yeah,
but these guys can't be hindered. They have Pathfinder and Strider.
Oh, that's right.
So
good.
They're running over obstacles and still not carrying, which is very nice.
So only Phalanx is the counter, really.
It's not even a very
Phalanx
good counter.
is absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like they'll breeze through virtually any Phalanx unit without the Thunderous Charge, even without the Bane Chant. So I don't know, point and click, meathead, super strong unit. I can't help it. So I guess that means I get to take the Brutox then.
Yeah, you can take it.
Well, one more thing to add into the Stampede. This tends to be the unit that I like to throw the +1 to hit item on Brew of Sharpness on.
Because they're not good
just
enough.
Because, well,
in for penny, in for pound, right? Why not?
Well, the reason for that is there is a lot of ensnare out there in our meta starting to pop up.
Like 1 to hit, yeah.
Yeah, and you drop from 4s to 5s, and it's a big difference. So throwing that +1 to hitting on 3s, now you can take on hordes fairly reliably and not have to worry about it. You can hit things that have ensnare and still, blow through them relatively easily. Though I did face a Placoderm horde this last tournament, and I basically just sacrificed that unit because they had, one side shaft and I could only get 1 unit in. And it's like, well, this is my chance to do a bunch of damage to it. I did 11 or 12 on the first go, and then got flanked. Didn't care because then the next turn I was coming in and taking it off with another unit.
And he, just so you know, Placoderms are defense 6 and Phalanx.
Ooh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's it called? The +1 to hit item, is that the Brew of Sharpness?
Brew of Sharpness. Yeah.
So not only are you herding all these poor creatures into battle against their will, probably, but you're also like spiking their water trough beforehand.
Anyway, I wanted to mention that. So
that sounds nasty. Okay, I can see how that would work. So speaking of brutal, let's talk Brutox. We've got a monster, speed 8, melee 4+, defense 4+, 1d6 plus 8 attacks. Okay, nerve 16/19 and 220 points. So we've got crushing strength 2, fury, regenerate 5+, strider, thunderous charge 2. And does not have Pathfinder.
So it's a super giant.
It's a super, this guy does not muck around. Thunderous 2, crushing 2, madness, and loads of attacks.
Fury is fantastic on this guy.
Defense is slightly lower compared to a standard giant, but you also have slightly more attacks where a giant gets d6 plus 6.
Right.
The waiver is slightly higher on a normal giant with 17/19.
But then you've got regen in this case.
Yep, regen over no regen, and standard giant has crushing 3 only. This guy's CS2 TC2.
I feel like with only defense 4 and nerve 16, 19, he's probably quite often going to waver if you go into him with something solid. But then he's got fury and he'll just come back and hit you even harder than you hit him. So that's got to be a bit of a concern. Between 9 and 14 attacks. So on the high end, that's scary. On the low end, you could whiff because he's only melee 4+. You could fluff it.
Right.
Yeah.
I like him. I like giants. I think they're fun.
Is this where you put your Cygor?
Well, actually, I have that in the middle of one of my stampedes, just from a modeling perspective. I do like the Brutox. Overall, I tend to not run him. I ran him early on in my early lists. I used to run him, but with the defense 4, I found he was wavered with shooting too easily, and then someone would take him off later on.
Yeah.
Even with the regen and things. But he is good.
He's slightly faster than a giant.
Oh yes, speed 8
compared to 7. What I don't get is why a Brutox doesn't have brutal. It just seems like it should go hand in hand.
I don't know, and I see him as like a guardian brute, and yet he has defense 4 instead of 5. So I'd almost prefer him to have defense 5 and not regeneration than the other way around.
On that same train of thought that I'm on, why don't guardian brutes have brutal? Anything with brute in the name should be brutal. Just personally.
Well, fury, I guess, but yeah, I hear you.
I don't know. Sometimes on the train to work, I see a few brutes who are not necessarily brutal, just a bit smelly and annoying. That could be a brute, Anywho, Brutox.
I tend to not run him in favor of the Chimera myself, but if I'm running a monster.
Is that because it can fly, or is it the points thing?
It's because it can do 2 different purposes, and the Brutox kind of falls in the middle to me.
How about you tell us about the Chimera now, just while we're on that?
Sure. This is a monster, speed 7, melee 3+, defense 5+, 7 attacks, has a 15-17 nerve for 160 points. You get crushing strength 2, pathfinder, and vicious, and you can upgrade 2 wings for fly and speed 10 for 50 points. So this unit I see can do 2 different things. You can keep it cheap at the 160 points, and you have a defense 5 mobile, small nerve, small, I should say, footprint nerve block of 15-17 to run around and get in people's way. I think that's a really solid way to spend 160 points, especially if you start getting into flanks and things with ongoing, slog fests in the middle of your table. That's Pathfinder, and
still has Pathfinder
charges hitting on 3s with 14 attacks and crushing 2 is very nice. Or you throw those wings on it, and now it kind of becomes a mini dragon. It's not as good as a dragon, 7 attacks, but it's hitting on 3s, crushing 2 for 210 points. Instead of spending 300 plus for a dragon.
Still less than a Brutox?
Yes, still less than a Brutox, and it's much more mobile with those wings and nimble and everything.
Crushing 2 is still decent. That'll be fine for most cases.
Yes.
I feel like I can see why you don't take the Brutox when you've got this option, because they sort of fulfill the same role. At the high end, the Brutox is better. If you're getting a lot of regen off reliably and you're rolling high on your number of attacks and he's really hitting hard, then in the sort of best case scenario, Brutox is better. But in virtually every other case, I feel like the Chimera is the better option.
Chimera.
I wanted to see if you'd noticed that. I've heard it called a Chimera and also a Chimera. How do you feel about that, Bensome?
My eyes twitch.
No, it's a great unit, and I've seen a lot of people run 2 of these with fly, and that becomes the flank.
And they are a bizarre combination of animals, so you could take all kinds of weird models to represent your chimera, I suppose.
As long as you glue them together.
As long as you glue them together, yeah. You could stick like a lion on top of a giraffe or something, and that could be
a lion head up at the top of the lion.
There you go. Slap some wings on it.
With penguin wings.
A lion riding a giraffe dressed as a pirate. That's pretty... Yes, of course. Penguin, tiny little penguin wings.
Best painted award right there.
So, what do you use as your chimera?
Well, I have an old GW one, the plastic kit from
It's a good
years
model.
ago. I also have a one that I'm hoping to break out. I have just some finishing painting touches that I'm doing for Renegade GT here coming up in a few weeks, which is a Skyboar Minotaur. It's their largest Minotaur. He's kind of like leaning down with his hand on a rock and then kind of looking up, and his axe is held behind him. And I've put some wings on him, some dragon wings on him, and I think it's turning out really nice. So that'll be my
That sounds
chimera
pretty
of the
badass.
future.
Awesome. It'll take a while to paint the giraffe spots on, I suppose, but it'll be worth it.
It depends on how much you want that the black from the penguin wings to kind of go up over the back.
It's a subtle blending technique.
Right. A little bit of airbrush and you'd be good to go.
I still like the Brutox, but the Chimera is a better choice. Easier to play with as well. The Brutox is very one-dimensional. Anyway, we've got one more before our next break. We have the one war engine that, like, is it a war engine? It's a totem. It's a great totem. It's not a war engine. It's a rock. So this thing has no stats apart from defense 5 and fearless 18 for 80 points. You can only have one of these things. It's a it's a living legend rock. It has advanced deployment, a base of 5x75, and you can't increase this, so it's very specific there. It has to be 75x75. Yeah, and height 4. It has inspiring and rallying 2. So basically, this is just a nerve buff for your army. You can kind of put it in front of your army with the advanced deployment.
Right.
Great modeling
It is.
opportunity.
Yep. There's lots you can do with that. I have only used it a couple times in casual games. I've never brought one to a tournament. But this, I could see someone, if they had like a really nice totem that they built, like a herd stone from a decade ago, and they're like, I really want to use this. There are some things you could use it for tactically. So a lot of the scenarios force you to go someplace. They're forcing you to hold objectives. They're forcing you to move to the center of the table or to cross over, whatever the case may be. Rallying 2 is nothing to sneeze at. And if you have, like, let's just say my army with the Guardian Brutes that you're wanting to, run up next to them, suddenly bumping them to 1720s for their nerve is pretty darn nice with Fury and Defense 5. So it can serve a purpose there. It can also serve a tactical purpose if you're playing against a lot of hordes, and even if your TO measures out, blocking terrain to be, to allow hordes to go through, you can drop a totem between them and force them to have to deal with it, kill the totem. It's a nerve 18 defense 5, so it's not just a pushover. It may take them 2 turns to get through that. So I could see someone using this for 80 points, but I tend to not.
And what does I've forgotten what advanced deployment does exactly?
Basically, after you've chosen sides, you can, before you deploy any of your other units, this gets deployed.
Oh, okay. So it's not a positive. It's in fact actually a minor negative that you have to pop it out beforehand. But the problem is that inspiring and rallying is only 6 inches, isn't it? If it was 12, 18, something like that, then you'd really be in business. But 6 inches is not very far in an army that you're generally wanting to charge forward and engage your opponent as early as possible, possibly in their deployment zone. You end up leaving it behind a lot.
Also, with advanced deployments, you get to put it anywhere on the table.
Oh, okay. Correct. You do get to put it anywhere. Okay, that makes a big difference.
Yes.
3 inches.
Yeah, I should have said that.
Right.
So you can drop it out there in the middle, between those blocking terrains, or, you might know you're doing the dominate scenario. Okay, well, I'm going to plot this where we're all going to be fighting, maybe towards my side of that circle, but be able to buff everything in that circle of mine.
And then it doesn't matter that you're putting it down first. The point is now you have to deal with it.
Yeah, seems pretty good. You could use it as line of sight blocker to, advance things, more safely from enemy fire and things like that. But I suppose you could also use it to block big charges of your big fat units and what have you as well, if they sort of deploy on the other side of it. So I don't know. I rate it. I think it's really good for 80 points. It's got quite a lot of tactical functionality for that kind of price.
Yeah, I agree. I just haven't used one. beyond those couple of casual games and stuff. So, and I think it would be fun to bring to a tournament sometime.
Yeah, it's something I'd like to try out.
Plus, if you're going for painting awards, there's a lot you could do with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great totem that would be very cool.
Make a really cool centerpiece out of it.
I got to think of something to make up for my fancy beastman. I haven't even thought about in my army. So I guess that's something for another time. Anyway,
do like
what we'll
a big
do now?
pile of jobbies with like a nice table setting on top of it. That's it. A gentleman beastman could sit at.
Or one of those like champagne towers.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we'll go for a break. We'll come back and we'll round off the army list, go through the heroes and stuff.
Excellent.
Back soon.
Good, brave Chiron saw all that had occurred and knew what he must do. He watched from afar, rescuing the lost souls discarded by his brother and Garkin as of no use to their schemes. He gathered the light from all around him, from the earth and the sky, and he gave this light to us. Brave Chiron could not remake the lost as they once were, but he rebuilt the shattered lives and bodies and purified the evil in their hearts. We opened our eyes and we knew one another as brothers and sisters. In return, our father, brave Chiron, gave us to the mother world to protect her from the evil forged by Garkin.
Okay, we have returned, and next we are going through the heroes. We'll start off with the big fella, the Great Chieftain. This guy is speed 6, melee 3, defense 5, 5 attacks with a 12-14 nerf for 140 points, and he's bringing to the table Crushing 1, Thunderous Charge 1, Individual and Inspiring, which is good. He does have a couple of options. A bow for 10 points, that gives him a ranged stat of 4. And he can also bring along some hunting animals. 140 points for a 12-14 nerf fella. No mount for this guy, so he's always on foot. He does Inspire though, and I guess ranged 4 with 5 attacks for the bow is okay.
For 10 points, why not?
Yep.
150, probably still wouldn't take him in most cases. He seems like a weird unit. Melee 3, 5 attacks, Crushing and Thunderous 1, so he can do a few points of damage. But then he'll just get charged back and then overrun.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd take him if you were going pretty wide on. From reading this list, I feel like what a lot of people are going to do is take a heap of hordes of very fast things and a few monsters and stuff. But if you're going for more of the lots of tribal warriors and longhorns and tribal spears and that kind of thing,
very infantry heavy,
then yeah, I could definitely see whacking him in there just to inspire your mates and add a bit of extra punch.
But if he's just inspiring, why not the tribal totem bearer, which is 50 points?
Well, because he can also shoot off little things, pop a few extra wounds on things here and there without you having to pay the points for a unit of hunters or what have you. Yeah, he's okay. He's kind of like a mini unit of hunters that inspires in a way.
Are you giving him any items?
Nah. Are you? I don't know.
If I were to run this guy, I would run wings on him. Wings of the honeymaze.
Mm-hmm.
That could work.
If this guy had a mount option, I would take him on a semi-regular basis. Because he's speed 6 and he can't be mounted, if I'm going to take a guy to run around and do that, do those things you were talking about, I'm going to take the Centaur Chief.
Yeah.
He's faster, he's cheaper, he doesn't have quite the durability and things, I get that, but he is cheaper and he has the bow option as well.
How about you just run through the chief then, just so we can compare?
So he is, and I think it's because of the Centaur Chief that they didn't give the Great Chieftain a mount option. But he's speed 8, melee 3+, defense 4+, with 4 attacks, nerve 11-13 for 105 points. He's hero cav, crushing strength 2, individual, inspiring, pathfinder, and thunderous charge 1. And he can be upgraded with hunting animals for 10 points or a bow for 10 points, hitting on 4s, which is the way to go.
He's also ripped AF, so that's sort of helps him out in battle, no doubt.
That's the crushing too.
I could see actually taking him with some hunting animals too, because apart from the fact that you could do quite a cool modeling option, I reckon, have him on a base with like I don't know, his loyal puma or something like that.
Hugs.
Backing him up. Maybe glue a lion or a giraffe or whatever.
We need giraffes.
I can see what you mean. Like For me, it's very simple. If you've got the fast army, like it sounds like you have, Kris, with lots of thumpy critters and whatever, then you go for the Centaur chief. And if you've got your more infantry heavy army, then I think the Great Chieftain's good.
Sure.
But yeah, getting the inspiring where you need it is very valuable.
Would putting the rally banner on this guy be worth?
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, sticking rallying on any of heroes that are hanging behind your lines to boost up nerve is always good.
But he is cav sized, so he might be able to get seen over the top of you.
Not if everything else in your army is that size or bigger anyway.
Right. If you're running around with lichens or guardian brutes or something.
Yeah, I could see putting the rallying banner on him. He's not that many points still for a very reliable inspiring source at that point. And just running behind stuff, yeah, just be like stuff at he's only defense 4+, nerve 11.
As far as those, mounted heroes go, he's very reliable. With 4 attacks that hit on 3+, with crushing 2 and thunderous 1, he's a reliable mechanism to ground a dragon that gets into your, gets around you to the back or something. And he's just about the only unit in the game, unit in this list that can do that, because he's speed 8, individual, has that 16-inch radius to turn any direction and charge. He serves a really good purpose that way.
That makes sense. Yeah, could see he's good fire defense. Absolutely. And another good option to disrupt bow units and things as well.
Right. Yep.
What happens when you give the chieftain a chariot, Hugh?
They become a great chieftain on tribal chariot. So they get to still be the big swing and D, but they also get a pimp ride to take them into battle, which gives them speed 9, melee 3+, defense 5+, attack 7. So you get an extra couple of cheeky attacks, probably from your wheels or whatever, or your little critters that are pulling the chariot. Nerve 14 and 16 for 190 points. So it's a 50-point mount option. It also increases his thunderous from 1 to 2, and that's a boot it. You can still give him a bow, no animal companions though when you're on your chariot.
No Pathfinder and large cav, so height 3 now.
And with the Clash of Kings, he gets nimble for free.
Good.
Ooh.
I would say that bow option for only 10 points is a must.
7
with
attacks.
this guy. 7 attacks and being able to shoot without penalty is really good.
Oh yeah, staple it onto him. I mean, 10 points. What a ripper! And it's not even using your magic item slot. He's cool. I really like him. He's a bit expensive, but he's just so stylish. I love having a character in a chariot as your leader, like just blowing the horns and getting stuck in there, and you can get a nice knuckles on hips kind of pose happening in your chariot. It's just, I don't know, I just like it.
Right.
I wish there was an option for a mediocre chieftain, so they weren't all great.
No, they're all great, mate.
Just Larry, the not so bad chieftain. He produces all these policies in season 3.
Well, I guess the regular great chieftain is not that great, really, because he doesn't have his pimp ride. So
no, that's right.
Right. Even the beast packs won't let him ride on him. So.
All right. Next, we've got the tracker. He is a tracker on speed 6, melee 4, range 4, defense 4. Shame the attacks aren't 4, but we've got 3 attacks there. Nerve of 10, 12 for 70 points. He's got a bow, comes standard, individual, piercing 1, stealthy, and vanguard, and you can give him some hunting animal friends for 10 points.
Why?
What does this guy actually do? Oh,
he sneaks about, vanguards, and sicks some dogs on people, and then dies.
So I've tried this guy out, and I haven't been able to get him to really work. I mean, he does have a fairly reliable bow, hitting on 4s with 3 attacks and piercing 1. Being stealthy in an individual, he's very hard to shoot off in comparison to the troop of hunters that you might take for similar points. But
not if a breath weapon hits him.
Yeah. He's there to put that 1 wound on things and force those, as we were talking about earlier when we were talking about the hunters. Except he's not. If he had 4 attacks, I'd like him a lot more, actually, because he'd hit that a lot more reliably. But I feel like I agree. I'm gonna fluff my rolls so often with that 3 attacks.
I do like the flavor text here, that he's the best, most experienced of the hunters, and they often operate by themselves, ranging head of the tribe, and excel at what they do.
But it's a mystery as to what that actually is. Whatever it is they do.
Vanguarding.
They make really good picnics. They get ahead of the rest of the animals, and they lay they find a nice glade or whatever. They're really good event organizers. That's what they truly excel at.
All right, who'd like to tell us about the Shaman or Shaman?
This is the number one hero in this list, and most people run a couple of these because the Shaman inspires. He can be the only hero you take in the list. But let's go right through it. He's speed 6, melee 4+, defense 4+, 2 attacks. That's quite key.
Well, most mages only have 1.
Exactly. And 11-13 nerve for 95 points. He has Bane Chant 3, which is fantastic. He's individual inspiring, which is another key. Pathfinder, and don't leave out Thunderous Charge 1. You have no idea how many times I've charged these guys in late game and taken a unit off. Or grounded a dragon and can't get to my other units. I even charged a Shaman in and then Bane Chanted with my other Shaman just to make sure.
Crazy.
I usually run the Heal 5 upgrade on these guys for 25 points, but they also have Wind Blast 5 available for 30. You can mount them for 15 points and give them speed 9, and then they have access to the other various spells. I've run Mind Fog on one before just because my lists have a lack of shooting, and it can be that nice reach out and touch something that maybe I wounded earlier in the game and then lost on the exchanging of blows, and now I've left a wounded horde hanging out there that just needs another nerve check on it. So that is one that I try to slip in when I can on the Shaman.
Oh, this guy is just so good. I mean,
He is.
It's amazing.
Take your Totem Bearer, which is 50 points, 45-point upgrade, and now he's got all these spells.
Yeah, and he's why is he inspiring? He'd still be good without inspiring.
He's inspiring because he's good. Everybody loves him, so he inspires people.
And then
exactly,
as you say, unlike other wizards, he actually has the potential to go in and do that wound and take something off late game, which is just, can't be underestimated as well. Like this guy just does everything. I can see why you said, Kris, that you might just take bloody 4 of these and call it a day.
Yeah.
Well, I usually take 2, and I run the heal upgrade, and so they're sitting at 120 points before you're even putting artifacts on them and things like that. Which sometimes I'll run, the 10-point item to be able to cast 2 spells in the same turn. Very rarely will you have a game where you don't have a use of casting both Bane Chant and Heal on a unit. It's a very good unit. I won't disagree because I run 2 of them all the time. But at the same time, it's not cheap. You're running that pair at 240 points.
Wind Blast. Does anyone see Wind Blast? Because I haven't seen anyone take Wind Blast before.
No, I want to take 4, all mounted, or with Wind Blast. That's 140 points each. It's only 560 points of just huffing and puffing and blowing those motherfuckers' houses down. Just get them right around the flank and just blow fools.
Keep pushing them off.
Oh, I love it. What happens if you fall off the table?
The table edge is blocking terrain. You stop. But I will say it depends on the tournament for Wind Blast. I would have liked to have Wind Blast at this last tournament that I went to where there was no turn 7. It was just in the rule pack. It's 6 turns. You don't roll for turn 7 on these timed games. I would say going second and having Wind Blast on when that's it.
Just to push them off the objectives and they can't get back on.
Exactly. That can be very helpful and can win you games. But in general, yes, I tend not to take it. I would say the other use for Wind Blast, though, that a lot of people don't talk about is for a lot of units, let's talk about these units with the high nerve above. You pretty much, people are wanting to double charge them, right? They don't want to get into, let's say, double charge the Stampede. They don't want to get into a drawn out combat with them. And so your speed 8 cav, those 2 regiments move up and they're ready to charge the Stampede next turn. Well, you Wind Blast one of them back. Now only one of them is in charge range this turn. And do they take that one unit in there? They'll probably lose it on the counter charge back if you're Bane Chanting Stampede. So it may make them think twice. So there are some things you can do with it, but I agree. 30 points it's a big price to pay for just some small things you could do in the game.
Wind Blast in general needs to have a point reduction just because the idea is nice, but whenever you go to take it, you think, oh, 30 points. And it's only useful sometimes.
Sometimes it feels
Right.
like you need several. It's a bit like heal in a sense, because if you've got a high number on it, then it's not bad. And if you've got a couple of healers, like I feel like heal has a certain critical mass as well, where if you've got say 10 dice to throw at heal, then it's really meaningful. But if you're only throwing like 2 or 3, then it's sort of like, who cares? Wind Blast feels a bit that way as well. But I feel like I like your tactics there, Kris. It sounds good, but it's just thinking too small, man. Like I want to blow units 12 inches back and just repeatedly throw them behind my totem and strategically put on the board in such a way. Like I've brought my forests along so that they don't know where to move. They've only got a few avenues. I've plunked a big, awful, bloody pile of dung in between 2 of those forests, and then the only other route they've got to walk down is keep blowing them away. I mean, I don't even have to play the game.
I mean, and it's because Kings of War is so moving intensive and precise. Even just blowing someone 1 inch into a forest, and now they charge hindered.
Delicious.
But
No, I
yeah,
like it.
I just think it needs a point drop.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Okay.
Next up,
let me do another one. I want to do Tribal Totem Bearer.
you can do that one.
This is your little banner waving kind of character. He's 1 attack, melee 4+, defense 4+, speed 6, nerve 9, 11 for 50 points, individual inspiring and thunderous charge 1. Why does he have 1 attack and the Shaman's got 2? I don't know. Shaman's just...
He's got both hands on the
Because the
flag.
Shaman is a boss.
Yeah, he can really lay about him with that stick. But the Tribal Totem Bearer, yeah, he's hindered by his massive flag that he's carrying around, or some other totem. Maybe he's carrying, some sort of witchy poo tribal kind of inspiring affair. He can have hunting animals and he can be mounted. I could see giving him hunting animals for 10 points. I mean, if you're taking him,
Yeah,
Yep,
it's cheap range
yep.
attack.
why not? It's a cheap range attack, that's right. And it doesn't matter how many attacks he's got, it just does straight up 5.
Correct.
Yeah, he's just
Cheap and cheerful.
cheaper Shaman without all the good stuff.
Without spells.
Hmm.
I mean, every army has one of these, right? And most armies have a use for sticking a second or third cheap inspiring source out on the table. I do like mounting these guys when I have, just because for 65 points, I'm getting to inspire my units, but then I've got a speed 9 speed bump that I can throw out in front of things if I need to for chaff, which is very handy for only 65 points.
Yeah, that makes sense. And he's a good, cheap and cheerful, inspiring source. And a lot of armies really want that. But like where other armies, like say my Ratmen, for example, I'm taking a couple of, assassins or shamans that can, the warlock kind of zappy, witchy poo kind of characters and all that kind of stuff. All these bros don't have inspiring. So you really want that cheap inspiring source.
Right.
But in this army, you can sort of have your cake and eat it too, in a way. Like, so you can have your shaman to do all your magic stuff and even hit something from time to time.
Or your Centaur chief, that's your your
That's
cav
it.
guy running around. He also inspires. So every single guy except the tracker inspires here.
Yeah, every single guy except for the the wedding planner that you're not begin with has inspiring anyway. So that I feel like that detracts. And you've also got your totem if you've got your big pile of dung. What's it called again? The great totem. So if you're taking a great totem and a handful of other characters, don't see the need for this guy, but as compared to how much of a vital role he fulfills in some other armies. But
I'd like someone to model a great totem after their great chieftain, so it's just a big statue of their chieftain.
and the tribal totem bearer
That would be epic.
has exactly the same totem, just a smaller version. And he's
on a
he's like
stick.
just carrying it around. Yeah.
You could have some fun with that and take your model, whatever you have modeled up as great chieftain, and take it to get it scanned, 3D scanned, and 3D print that, and then it wouldn't even matter if it's really good, but you just kind of texture it up and stuff like that to make it look stone. But that would be pretty cool as a great.
Would be.
That'd be
I'd like
awesome.
someone to do
Exact
that.
same pose. So you've got your
Yeah.
Exactly, it'd be exactly the same.
big swinging D great chieftain on his tribal chariot, hands on hips, just like big bloody muzzle in the air, just looking bold as pecs of the gods. And then that's your totem as well. I love it. This army just makes itself.
And there's your Player's Choice Award right there. Okay, let's get into the large infantry hero. First one we've got is the Lycan Alpha. So speed 9, melee 3, defense 5, 7 attacks, 14, 16 nerve for 205 points, crushing 2, inspiring for lichens only, nimble and regen 5. So he's like in between a
So
regiment and
good.
a horde.
Yeah.
That inspires himself too. So 7 attacks instead of 9 for the Lycan regiment, but you get a nerve bump.
But he's defense 5.
Defense 5 and a smaller footprint as well.
Yes.
Yeah, he's pretty hard
That
to
small
pick up
footprint,
for-
defense 5, regen, nice nerve. He's really good. Yeah.
So when I'm writing my lists, I often waver between taking a horde of Lycans or this guy, or even just 2 of these guys.
He's actually very comparable to the Chimera. Same number of
Yes.
attacks,
Same crushing strength. Hits on 3s just like it. Yep.
same
he is.
footprint. Yeah, quite a similar kind of figure actually. But then obviously he inspires his fellow swole wolves.
And himself,
Yep.
which is good.
I've always found that weird in Kings of War how you inspire yourself, but I mean it makes sense for the
They're
great
very
beast
full of
lord.
themselves.
He's so inspirational. He definitely inspires himself. For other characters, it's a bit weird.
He's okay. I don't know if I'd give him any items. I just like him as he is.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to give him that pushes him over the top that he doesn't already do.
Yeah, makes sense.
He's a good unit. What I struggle with, and why I typically take the Chimera instead, if they were side by side, I'd probably rather have this guy than the Chimera, even though I don't have fly, but he's almost as fast.
Mhm.
He's more durable because of that inspiring and things like that, and the regeneration really helps. But it comes down to unlocks. So if you're running a couple of hordes of something that are unlocking everything, then you're running a couple of shaman. There's your hero slots, and then you've got your couple of stampedes, which are special choices. You've got your chaff that are all special choices, right? It becomes a little difficult sometimes to get another unlock in there to then squeeze this guy in. But if you're going a little bit, it really depends on how you're designing your list.
Makes sense.
And how about the Guardian Champion? If you want to run through that, because the brutes are your favorite, does this guy compare?
So for what I just said about having a hard time fitting in the Lycan Alpha, this is why this guy doesn't make it into my list typically, just because I really want to have that. He inspires my Guardian Brutes, so he would serve that same purpose, but he doesn't cast the support spells, the healing and things like that those shamans do. But he's speed 6, melee 3, unlike the Guardian Brutes who are 4s, defense 5 like them, 6 attacks, a 13-16 nerve for 140 points. He has crushing strength 1, fury, he inspires the Guardian Brutes in himself. He is nimble, and he has Thunderous Charge 2. I think he's a good unit. For 140 points, I think he does a lot. It's just I have a hard time fitting him in my armies a lot of times.
He's actually super similar to the Great Chieftain on foot as well, actually. Stat line wise, he is identical, except he has 1 extra attack and one extra... 2 extra nerve. Goes from 12-14 to 13-16.
Yeah.
He's exactly the same price. Yeah, he kind of undermines the Great Chieftain to some extent. This is your Doom Bull or what have you.
Right. And he doubles his attacks when he gets into flanks, right? So that's going to hurt. But he doesn't have that 360-degree field of vision for charging things to get in behind you like the Chieftain could.
True, very good point. But I suppose it's a deal breaker if you don't have a lot of brutes. Like you take this guy if you've got a bunch of brutes, because otherwise his inspiring doesn't take effect. But yeah, so solid dude.
Still inspires himself. I mean, he's somebody who could run off on his own and still get it done. But when I'm choosing between this and the Lycan Alpha, I think outshines him. I know the Lycan Alpha is way more expensive, but just that extra speed and regeneration with the same defense, it's just so nice with that Alpha. But yeah, both I think are pretty good units.
I can see why you struggle with unlocks, though. Yeah, you might be able to sneak one of these bros in.
Right.
Are we giving them hunting animals?
You could. The list does lack a lot of ranged attacks, and because he can't spin around and hit something behind your lines unless you have him angled just right, theoretically with the nimble, he could turn around and then throw the hunting animals at them.
And there's something cute about a big nasty Minotaur boss man with like his little pet. I like that.
Right.
So shall I do Avatar of the Father?
Yep.
So Avatar of Big Daddy. He's unit size 1 because he's a monster hero and a monster. He's got speed 9, melee 3+, defense 5+, 9 attacks, and fearless 19 for 270 points. So he's getting up there in the old price bracket.
Yeah, he is.
Crushing Strength 1, Elite, Iron Resolve, Thunderous Charge 3, and Very Inspiring. He can get Heal 6 for 25 points, which is interesting. And he can also grab Wings for 50 points if you really want to take him right up there into dragon territory.
320 points for that. 345 for heal as well.
So, yeah, this is just a big, nasty, stompy beast that's bigger, nastier, and stompier than all the other beasts in the list, I guess.
Yeah, this guy, when Dan King was designing this army initially, his vision of Aslan,
Right.
Narnian army,
Mm.
he is very good. I would say where I struggle with him is I want to have nimble on something like this, so I'm typically putting that speed 10 fly on this guy.
I would never not take fly because, yes, he's got speed 9 normally, but you're paying so many points. You want to make sure that that's impactful. It's the same with a lot of these sort of similar units, like the big demon in Skaven and the big demon in Demons and what have you. Like you want to get those wings on there because if you're keeping in budget, why not just take another stompy monster that's more budget, you know?
Right. Well, I would be tempted, because he's already speed 9, if he was not a living legend, if I could put it on him, I would be tempted to put Wine of Elven Kind on him. And the reason I say that is if you could just make him nimble, then but you don't get the nimble from fly, people can't disrupt him and knock that nimble off. So he could still make his way around things. So I see, like with Abyssals, I'll see people run one of those Abyssal Fiends with wings and the other one with like Wine of Elven Kind, so that you're still nimble and can do those charges. I won't use the dreaded word, I guess. Dash 19 and Defense 5 is very nice on this model, though. You know, he's relatively hard to kill and he's fearless. So
yeah,
Iron Resolve helps a bit, but
yeah, no regen. You're definitely gonna throw. Yeah, it seems like a good target for those high crushing or high piercing kind of attacks, and you're definitely gonna want to put a few wounds on this guy early. Otherwise, he's just gonna have run of the board, just like all big flying nasty monsters. Really, I don't think he's particularly. He does have heal 6, which is interesting. Now you can't target yourself with heal 6. Is that correct?
No.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's a bit of an odd little support element that you can chuck on him as well. Would you do that?
I tried using I tried using 6 initially in a couple of games with him. I found I just want to get him to combat.
Yeah, you want him in combat. You're paying so many points. You don't want to pay. You don't want him just to be a 300-point shaman in there. Stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if this guy had like a healing aura.
I wish he did have crushing strength 2. The crushing 1 means like if you're faced off against a dragon, like say you throw wings on him and he's 320 points and you're the flying monster across from the dragon. That dragon is winning, because once you get into protracted combat there, with only crushing 1, you're wounding on 4s and the dragon's wounding you on 2s. So I really wish this had crushing strength 2. He does have, some other things that the dragon doesn't have.
Like very inspiring, obviously. It's pretty legit. What does Iron Resolve do again? I didn't see that run very often.
When you roll a nerve and they don't make you run, you get a point of damage healed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay, I guess.
So he's slowly getting...
Like
it is pretty good.
It's the poor man's regen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, cool.
I kind of like him, but I think he's just really expensive for a monster.
I feel like there's certain armies that would love to have him, but I don't think he's a bad choice. If you want to build your army around, he can inspire everyone and get in lots of, big nasty attacks and whatever. But I feel like in the context of this list that has so many big stompy hordes and nasty, high impact kind of units, I just don't see much of a place for him. I'd probably rather take, a couple of shamans running around with my stampedes and my minotaurs and what have you than this guy. Although I don't think he's a bad choice.
Yeah, when I look at... No, I don't think he's a bad choice. But I'll save 110 points and take the flying chimera.
Yeah.
Yep, agree.
But there's some good modeling opportunities as well.
Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of that in this list in general. Lots of really cool centerpiece models, like pick and choose what you want to make look awesome. And I like Kris's idea of having very sort of Minotaur focused kind of list. Always looks bloody awesome on the table. So many good Minotaur miniatures out there.
Right. Yeah, there are. You can go very thematic with this. I mean, you can go a polar list with polar bears and walrus and all kinds of stuff like that. Mirror's Miniatures makes a number of things that you can go, rhinos, wolves. You can do a lot of different themes and pull off a number of different units sticking with the same theme with this army. So it's a modeler's haven. this army is.
I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be cool to do like a real swole Minotaur, Centaur kind of list as well. That could be really cool. It just
absolutely.
lots of variations on the Centaur and Centaur-like things. Maybe make it very horsey focused. You could have a stampede of horses and a stampede of ponies as your chaff or something. I don't know.
Right. And Clash of Kings did, they added in the living legend Centaur, Flaxhoof, and his living legend unit, Flaxhoof's Chosen, and stuff like that, where you could really design an army around that stuff.
Yeah, that is cool.
But what we'll do, I think, is we'll have one more break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the new units, the formations, and the allies, and perhaps just our thoughts on the army.
Sounds good.
Groovy.
Okay, so back in just a moment.
Dark Chiron saw his brave half's magic and cursed his brother's new children. He led some of us away from the brightness. Our siblings ran too far and they did not see the light. Instead, they fled and joined the black, evil things that now infested the mother world. Laughing, Dark Chiron also whispered mistrust into the hearts of the weak-minded humans. Men have resented our presence and distrusted our kind ever since, but we do not seek their acceptance. Let them live in their filthy towns and cities, away from the bosom of our mother. They are blind to our purpose.
All right, Bensome and Kris, it's time. It's time for Flaxy McHoof, the flaxiest of the Centaur breed. He is speed 8, melee 3+, range nothing, defense 4+, and 5 attacks, nerve 14 and 16 for 190 points. Now, there's a lot of rules. So he has Cav, Crushing Strength 2, for land and lady, individual, inspiring, Pathfinder, regeneration 5+, and Thunderous Charge 1. So he has all the rules. What does for land and lady do?
So while within 6 inches of this unit, friendly Centaur units gain a Thunderous Charge 1 or increase their Thunderous by 1 if they've already got it.
Okay. So he's an extra 85 points over a normal Centaur chief, but he has, a fair bit of extra.
Yeah, he's much better than your standard Centaur chief. He's much tougher to kill.
Higher nerve.
Yep. Yeah, higher nerve, higher defense, more attack, 2 more attacks, has the regen 5+. Yeah, he's an excellent hero. He's a bit spendy, but if you are doing a Centaur themed army, I can't imagine you not putting Flaxhoof in your list.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you're going Centaur theme, you got to. He's still defense 4, so same defense, I think. He's nerve 14-16, which is pretty solid.
Does his for land and lady rule affect himself as inspiring does?
Guess so. Why not?
I would. That is a good question.
Hasn't come up before. Something to put to the rules.
Something
team.
I'll have to ask the RC.
Yeah, there you go. But otherwise, yeah, he's a pretty good hero. I'd take him.
Yep, he brings his chosen mates along, his best friends, who are also speed 8, melee 3+, defense 4+, 16 attacks, nerve 14/16, and 215 points. So a little regiment of Centaur friendos with Crushing Strength 1, Pathfinder, regen 5+, and Thunderous Charge. So they both get the regen in there, which is cool.
And that'd be Thunderous Charge too if they're standing next to each other.
Right. Yep.
Presumably they eat lots of flax seeds, which gives them extra regen, and it's just really healthy for their bodies in general.
215 points for a fairly hard-hitting Cav unit. They're still soft. It's still only defense 4 with 14-16.
16 attacks is pretty delicious.
I think if you're taking one, you take the other. The regen 5.
The regen 5 is very nice to have on these guys. If you are running him with Flaxhoof, you're wounding defense 5 stuff on 2s, which is very nice when you're hitting on 3s and wounding on 2s. So, yeah, I like this unit.
They're kind of like abyssal half-breeds with Pathfinder, really. It's the same stats. Regen, Crushing 1, Thunderous 1, same nerve, same attacks. But with Flax Pro, you get the extra Thunderous Charge.
Right.
You're not bad. That's all right. So how about we just go into the formations then?
Sure.
So what's the first formation that we've got? The Great Beast Hunters?
Yep. Speaking of the centaurs.
So these are more Centaurs. So for the formation cost of 25, you need to take 1 Centaur Longmanes regiment, 2 Centaur Bray Hunter troops, and the Centaur chief. And while attacking large infantry, large cav, and monsters, all units in this formation are granted the elite special rule. So it's very specific in that you have to attack certain things to get the elite. But it's 25 points.
Yes.
And that's a lot of Centaurs.
Yeah, you need to take a lot of those long main ones, which is the one that
I mean, only 1 Longmane regiment, but then 2 Bray Hunter troops. I guess that's okay. That doesn't seem out of the ordinary to take.
no, you definitely take it if you're taking a Centaur army. I guess why not? Because you probably got those units anyway.
Yeah, and the chief we all agreed was decent,
Why not?
but attacking large infantry, large cav, and monsters only.
There's plenty of large infantry, large cav, and monsters though. Like most forces will have at least one of those units, I would think.
Mm.
Correct. Yeah. I would say as common as large cav and large infantry is right now, this definitely has a niche
Mm.
that you'll usually have targets. Not against everybody, I guess.
How about the other formation?
So, would you like a little breaking news to break things live on your podcast before anybody else knows?
No, we'll do the
Ooh,
Cloven Stalkers
exclusive.
first.
Exclusive for Clash of Kings 19.
We'll save that until
Well, there's a slight tweak to this formation.
it's a tweak to this formation, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then go for it. We'll do that one. Bugger it.
So the formation cost is coming down by 10 points. So
Oh,
instead of 25, you're only paying 15.
nice.
So it gets a little easier to eat that.
There you go, listeners. You heard that Pulse Racing exclusive here first. That is-
Indeed.
Cool. Makes it a bit more affordable. Yeah, I'd take it if I took a Centaur list. Absolutely.
yeah, especially now.
What are the Cloven Stalkers about?
Cloven Stalkers are basically the vanguard option to just send a whole bunch of your force forward here. You can take you need to take a horde of the tribal warriors that we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Kind of fall in the middle that very few people take. 2 tribal longhorn regiments, also that kind of suffer from that same thing, and the Great Chieftain.
Mhm.
This is all of those units get the Vanguard special rule if you pay 45 points to upgrade to this formation.
Ooh, it's a pretty hefty price tag.
It's a lot of Vanguard.
It is very cool to be 12 inches away from your enemy.
Very true.
Plus, you throw a couple of hunters, tribal hunters in your army, and now they're vanguarding up along with these guys. Potentially, you have a lot of your army in your opponent's face, and with relatively high nerve with these hordes and regiments here.
You still can't charge first turn though.
You can if you put the item that gives one of those a +1 speed.
Mm.
So if you wanted to put speed on your tribal warriors horde, you could charge top of 1 into something with that horde.
And have the Longhorns just behind for the follow up.
Right.
Yeah, or of course, if they came towards you at all, if they have first turn and they come toward you whatsoever, then
They're probably
Right.
charging.
you're charging. So I feel like this is what makes your Beastman army with heaps of gores and bestie gores and all those things that you're using as your tribal warriors and your longhorns and that kind of thing. And you're actually taking your Great Chieftain. These are sort of the units that we said perhaps they're a bit on the weaker side or don't have as much of a role. If that is your theme, you want a heavy infantry army, then you're going wide with heaps of goat people, then yeah, you'd take this, wouldn't you? I mean, this is what would make it viable in my head.
Yeah, I would actually really enjoy playing an army like this once in a while. I think it'd be really fun. And another exclusive for Direct Misfire, this one does also drop 10 points in cost.
Ooh.
So for 35 points, if I'm playing a speed tournament, this is pretty attractive because it's gonna make the game go nice and quick, one way or
Let's
another.
start rolling dice. Awesome.
So that's all we've got for formations and the additional units. Are we taking allies? What would be a good fit?
Would you like one more exclusive?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
keep them rolling, Chris. Lay them on us.
I figured the book's coming out soon anyway. Let's
Why
talk
not?
about the herd
Sure.
and what you're able to do. So there is one more formation coming with Clash of Kings 19. It's Chiron's Fury. We didn't go into the fluff, but Chiron is the god that they all worship and kind of save them and things. And This is a formation for lichens.
Ooh.
Only costs 15 points to upgrade, and you have to take 2 lichen regiments and a lichen alpha. And so you're not taking lichen hordes as part of this formation, but the alpha and the regiments, and it turns them fearless.
Okay.
Ooh, fearless.
Which on the alpha is particularly nice.
I don't know about you, Bensome, but I'm liking this one.
Nah. Yeah, I heard that one before. So we've got fearless 14 regiments, and then a
lichen alpha running around fearless, which is pretty darn good, I
fearless
think.
16.
That is one hell of a flanking force. I mean, it's expensive as all hell, but for what is that? Roughly 7 dog people just hoosting up the one flank with fearless. You got to put a lot into them to get rid of them.
Right. Especially with him running between the 2 regiments, firing, all 3. That's scary on a flank.
Absolutely, so maneuverable.
And then you take the vanguard formation. I don't know what to... Put your great totem out there.
This army writes itself. It's just
So the Chiron formation, the vanguard formation, great totem up front, first turn win.
Yep. 20 dice worth of wind blast, of course. Don't forget.
Yes, of course.
Don't know why at this point.
Yeah, well, we see a lot of lichen hordes in tournament lists, but you don't see too many regiments, and you see the alpha out there every now and again. But I think it'll be a fun formation.
All right, so now when I make my army, I have to make sure that I've got my multi-bases as regiments that fit hordes. Because I was thinking just hordes as well.
Because you probably either run one horde or you might run the 2 regiment and the leader guy and do this formation. How many points is for this formation?
So 15 points for the upgrade cost on the formation.
Okay, that's well worth it. If you're taking that anyway, or maybe if you've got a horde of lichen and you're considering your lichen alpha, then you might at that point go, you know what, let's split them up.
Yeah.
Let's really put the fear of God into our opponent. If not, you're having no fear in your wolf bros, and just so 3 units. So maneuverable. I don't know. It's scary. Heaven forbid you've actually taken any shooting units, because they're going to get gobbled in turn 2, guaranteed.
Yeah, for sure.
So back before that massive exclusive, allies. What do we need? Do we need them?
No.
Not even anything with super good defense, because the herd are neutral. You can take good or bad.
Correct. You can take anything.
Earth elementals.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot of options. I should have thought about this beforehand. Maybe like a really defensive unit. Maybe you'd take some golem-y kind of critters or something, because they don't really have a unit of that nature.
Earth elementals with a surger.
A shooting unit, any kind of decent range, like good old ogre shooters that get recommended every time, or like a cannon or something of that nature. It's not really. I feel like it's not very fluffy. It insults my sort of vision for what the army looks like to put some random dwarfs in there with a cannon or something. It's a bit weird.
Yeah. Well, for allies, forest goblins, and I was running chariots, a horde of chariots, a regiment of chariots, and a goblin king on chariots. And they were very useful, mainly because that height, they were cheap height 3 units that could shoot. So they had multiple purposes. I had some shooting in my army, so I could pick some things off. Height 3 shooting is very nice for seeing over enemy lines and just needing to plunk a wound on a hero or some a troop or something sitting in the back that you don't want shooting out through their units to cause you issues. And yet it packed enough of a punch, enough of a threat with the Thunders 2 that people couldn't ignore them. And being that height 3 and my Stampedes were height 3, I could get them in front of the Stampedes when I needed to and completely block off people from being able to see my Stampedes. So that was a quite useful ally to put in my army. I mean, you could do it with Kingdoms of Men and things too. I mean, there's other ways of getting those cheap chariots in there.
They're the cheapest of chariots, aren't they? 110 for a regiment.
Pretty much, yeah. And I really like the Goblin King on chariot. I think he's really good.
You can do basically the same thing within the army list itself by just taking the tribal chariots and the Great Chieftain on chariot, but I suppose you're paying a bit more points.
You're paying a lot more points, yeah. I mean, they are better. They're absolutely the ones in the list are absolutely better, but it's the cost. So the thing I've been running lately is allying in a regiment of forest shamblers and an elf dragon.
Hmm. Yeah, that would work.
It's nice just having that additional punch. He's everything that I wish my avatar would be, because he has that crushing 3. He has a nice breath weapon. I run him typically right behind my forest shamblers so that he can see over them, but they don't get in his way. And having that fearless vanguarding unit that actually is a reasonable chaff unit, it works pretty well.
So basically what you're saying is we take the Vanguard formation, take the Lycan formation, then we take Shamblers who also Vanguard.
Ally and some Shamblers.
Yeah. I need to rewrite my army now.
It's in keeping with that whole forest sort of Anger of the Wild theme quite nicely as well. Yeah.
All right, how about we go through, just to round off, with a couple of army lists. You've heard quite a bit, so I'm sure you've just got one at the top of your head. I've built one based around the units that I have that I hope would function, but things may need to change. So whenever you're ready, do you want to just run through one of your lists?
Sure. Basically, it starts right off with my 2 hordes of guardian brutes. That's what I use to unlock basically everything in my army.
Mm-hmm. Is that fairly standard, the hordes of brutes?
Yes, I typically go 2 hordes, and that gets me, up to 8 specials. Gets the for my unlocking of stampedes and my unlocking of the beast packs.
Yep.
It gets me my 2 shaman on the table. So basically, I grabbed those two units. I had an extra 5 points, so I threw healing brew on one of them, and then I ran 4 beast packs. Beast pack troops, 2 stampedes. One of the stampedes I run brew of sharpness, and the other one I run dwarven ale. I find with the change of dwarven ale succeeding on a 3+, that's a really good 10 points on a unit like that has an 18-20 nerve. It's a consistent target of my opponents, so they're shooting at it a lot, and it's nice when if I get wavered to have a 3+ chance of still being able to go and charge something. Then I run the 2 shamans, like I said, with heal 5 upgrade on each of those, and then I had the regiment of 4 shamblers and the dragon kindred lord, and that rounds out my 1995. If I'm going up to like the 2200, then I throw in my chimera in addition to that.
Right.
Okay, makes sense. So you get an extra flyer on the board. Geez, that's a scary list. That's very, very core of real solid large infantry with very high nerves almost across the board, and a bunch of healing as well to back that up. It's really nasty on the defense and the offense.
Yeah, my army's not very good. But that's the way with these reviews. We go through the thing, and then the lists that we'd written beforehand, we think, why did we even take that?
Oh, well, I guess that just proves it's a useful exercise going through each of the items on the list with an expert.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
What's your crappy herd list then?
Okay. Here we go. Thanks for the confidence there. So I've got a horde of tribal warriors, mainly for unlocks, and I have a lot of warriors miniatures, so I want them to be played on the board. I think they're very pretty. I've also got 2 troops of tribal hunters, and they both have bows, so I haven't gone for the throwing option here. I've just gone for the sit back and shoot option, because I've got everything else that's going to get in their face. I've got a horde of lycans and a horde of brutes. I have some nice minotaurs, and I have some nice werewolves. They're not steroid bros. I've also got 2 troops of beast pack. They're my chaff, and I've also got a horde of stampede with staying stone, just to bump up that favor. 1 brutox, because I love brutox. They're just giants, and why not? I love giants. I've also got Centaur Chief with the breath weapon, diadem of dragonkind, and a shaman with heal 5. They're my inspiring sources, and the avatar, another source of inspiring, and he gets up there with the brutes, the lycan, and the stampede.
Has he got wings?
Doesn't, because I can't afford it. I've got 25 points left over to put on something.
Well, then you can throw heal 6 on your avatar.
I'd rather play your list than Chris's list.
So if I rewrote this, Avatar's gone, Chimera would go in, and I'd just put in another character with firing, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe another shaman.
Sounds like a good plan. It's still a nice, all-round balanced list. I'd rather play yours than Chris's, that's for sure.
The double brute
I think,
horde, the double stampede.
Yeah, just double stampede. If you get 2 stampedes in there, then that really shapes the rest of the list, I feel like, because they're just so impactful. And, if you can just get a bunch of misc stuff to keep up with them and inspire them, then you're in business.
Or heal them.
Or heal them.
Yeah.
But I also thought for the longest time, I don't want to be that guy that you put 2 stampedes on the table and then your opponent groans. No.
I think that would happen if the very stereotypical herd list from not too long ago was double stampede, double lichen horde. That was what people were building around, with the stampedes forming the center of the army, and then the lichens being that flanking force. I feel like people did groan about that a little bit here and there, but at the same time, the herd isn't, trouncing the tournament spotlight right now. Nobody's rolling over everybody with herd armies through every tournament they go to. So I think it is kind of a middle of the pack army. You have a stampede unit that people do fear. They definitely have to take out, but with that defense 4, it's not that hard for shooting armies to take it off. It's fairly easy for chaff units to wound them and strip that thunderous charge off pretty quickly, because it's defense 4, not 5 or something. And so I think they are very scary, but at the same time, tactically can be dealt with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough.
And really, every army has that combination of units that people dislike. Like with the Ratkin, you might not have instant brutality of a stampede, but you also have warlocks and weapon teams.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And those shock troops are so good.
Yeah,
yeah, shock troops are pretty legit.
Yeah,
and you can, if you've got like more time than any sensible thinking human on Earth, then just lay down like 4 hordes of slaves and be like, build it. Ain't nobody got time for that. Painting up all those fools.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's sounds like cool lists.
Yeah,
it's a very fun army play, and I would say it's play against because you don't have. I think that the army that people don't want to play against these days are like the 200 shot army.
The gun lines.
You just nobody likes to just sit there and watch their units just being taken off. They at least want to get into combat and have a chance to hit back and take another unit off. Every game that I play, I lose units. Like there's no chance where I'm not feeding some units, even one of my big 4 units, to my opponent in order to get an advantage, but they're taking my stuff off. Right. So that's fun. And so people, I think, enjoy playing against herd lists, even if they're afraid of the stampede and things. But I think it's an enjoyable list to play against.
Yeah, at least they get amongst it. Most of the herd have fairly low defense, so that you're going to take a few things.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're going to have a maneuvering game and all the rest of it. That you're going to have to try to stay out of those damn forests. Unless you can be -1 to hit all the time, and they're not. That's going to be a challenge.
Which is another reason I don't mind taking guardian brutes without the pathfinder on them, because there's enough space typically on the table for a couple of those large infantry hordes to go where they don't have to go through the woods, and I route the things out of the woods with stampedes. There are only so many forests on a table. So
nice, makes sense. Well, both your lists need more windblast. Agreed. On the wires, but other than that, I approve.
Reduce the cost of windblast, and I'll take it. All right, I think that'll do us for now.
Cool.
I think it's a great list, and I'm looking forward to getting mine on the table. But it is also that kind of modeling thing that I don't want to rush it because they look so pretty so far. I don't want to stuff that up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me on, you guys.
Thanks for coming. It's been invaluable information that you have to impart.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bensome. Lovely to meet you, Kris. You're a stand-up guy. I hope you keep stomping faces with hooves over there in America.
And thank you, Hugh, once again for joining, filling out, because Boone and Selik, they just piked.
No worries. All good, mate. And listeners, if you're interested in Malifaux at all, The Red Jokers, which is a fun little podcast about Malifaux, and we talk a lot of bullshit, which has come out about once a month. And I guess, listeners, you heard it here first. The herd is the word.
Kris, have you got anything that you want to plug before we leave?
Sure. I'd love to invite the Lady of the Lake GT that I run typically at the end of July to early August. It looks like there's another breaking news thing, since I haven't been able to get out my own podcast in any recently at all. We are shifting this year's Lady of the Lake to the second weekend of August. And it is a fantastic tournament. It's among the larger tournaments in the U.S. And we had almost 50 players. It's a great venue, and we have a great Saturday night party, which is well known for its live music and lots of drinking in my backyard. And you can camp at my house to cut down on costs. I have a huge backyard, and lots of people take me up on that offer. So the Lady of the Lake GT is great. And when we do get out another one of our episodes for the Lake SWAT Fantasy Squad podcast, give us a listen.
When that next comes out.
Well, we've been trying to get an episode out for quite some time, but hopefully this next week we're recording. Crossing fingers.
Looking forward to it.
This sounds like one hell of a tournament. Like, what an awesome weekend to have the party.
If we could afford the airfare.
Where is this Lady of the Lake GT exactly?
It's in Duluth, Minnesota. So we're rated on if you know the Minnesota, like the United States geography. If you look at the United States, there's like those big lakes in the northern part of the United States there. We're on the biggest one that's on the upper left there. That's Lake Superior, and we are right on that lake. So
the one with the lady in it?
Yep.
Well, yeah, there's a lady in there. I bring in a band every year, so it's good times.
Oh, that sounds awesome. All right, I'll have to start saving for a plane ticket.
Yes, likewise. All right. Thanks, guys, once again. And thank you to the listeners for joining in and keeping with us. And yes, we're not dead. Anyway, see you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Sure.
We live to protect and serve the Mother. We are the lost now returned. We are the centaurs, fawns, satyrs, lichens, minotaurs, and more. Some are more beast than man, and some more man than beast. We live in the forest, in the hills, the mountains, and the rivers. We listen to the world, and the world speaks through us. We are the heartbeat and voice of the Mother. We are the herd.
Yeah, direct misfire blowing up the game. Talking many war games is our aim. From rule books to advice, we cover it all. With the best tactics, we never fall. Bensome and Spoon are your hosts every vid. Misfiring, but aiming up ahead. Comment, like, and subscribe today, keeping you notified and up to date. Come check us out at facebook.com/directmisfire or shoot us over an email at directmisfire@gmail.com.